The Atlanta Braves don't usually take a chance on Japanese players, but in this case, they should. I'm going to tell you why they need to be all over Tatsuya Imai in today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. Also, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at shorts.ball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X, Locked On Braves on Instagram, or wherever you get on the socials. You can help us out on YouTube as well. Just hit that subscribe button, that thumbs up button. Leave us a comment down below. And on the audio side, please leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. And big shout out to all my everydayers out there. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Tatsuya Imai. The Atlanta Braves don't usually go after Japanese international free agents, but I'm going to tell you why I think they should on this one. So we'll get into all of that today, on today's episode, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. Now, you can count the number of Japanese players who have played for the Braves on one hand, even if somehow you lost 3 fingers on that hand. They don't go after Japanese players, especially in the international free agent market. The last time they did was in 2009 when they signed Kenshin Kawakami to a 3-year deal worth $23 million. Those were for his age 34 through 36 seasons. And yeah, even if you don't remember, you can probably guess it didn't work out very well. Although the first season for Kawakami was okay, got off to a rough start, but after that, it was pretty much a disaster, and the Braves haven't gone back since. So to say that the odds of the Atlanta Braves signing Tatsuya Imai are extremely low is probably an understatement. It is not generally considered that the Braves are going to be one of the teams that he is looking at this offseason. The Braves are going to show him much interest, but that would be a mistake. I'm going to try to tell you why on today's episode, but Tatsuya Imai is a right-handed pitcher, 5'11", 154 pounds, 27 years old, doesn't turn 28 till May. So you're getting somebody in the prime of their career. Has already played 8 seasons in the Japanese Baseball League, the MPB, over there. A 3.15 ERA, a 1.27 WHIP is very high. 4.4 walk per 9, also very high, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. And an 8.5 K per 9. Now, couple of things, and I am not a Japanese Baseball League expert by any means, but offense very suppressed over there. So you'll see some ridiculous ERA numbers over there, but you won't see ridiculously high strikeout rates either, because Japanese players do typically put the ball in play and there's more contact. But just keep that in mind when looking at some of these numbers. Now, the past 3 seasons, he's thrown 163, 173 and a third, and 158 innings. And for the past 5 seasons, he's been very, very durable pitcher. So you love to see that. Another note on the Japanese league, it's generally for starters, you're pitching once a week. It's a 6-man rotation. You're pitching once a week. You're making, 26, 27, 28 starts a year. Now, since being posted, and Imai's already been posted, he has until January 2nd to sign with a team. One big advantage to signing Imai and others from Japan is that it doesn't come with a qualifying offer, so you won't lose that PPI pick that you get for Drake Baldwin winning Rookie of the Year and the bonus pool money that comes with that. However, you will have to pay a pretty penny for a posting fee in order to get him, but I'd rather pay that than give up the bonus pool money and that pick in the draft. Looking at the pitch mix for Tatsuya Imai, mid to upper 90s fastball, sits kind of 95, but can get up to 98, 99 even, and it has some run on it. It's not big induced vertical break numbers, but he throws from a lower arm slot, and it does have some arm side run on it, so it's a very good fastball, and like I said, can get it into the upper 90s, but mainly sits mid-90s, so that's really good velocity, especially for his size and that arm slot. A wipeout slider. It's his best pitch by far. Devastating on right-handed pitchers, especially a 53% whiff rate for righties against that slider this past season, and it was effective against lefties as well with a 36% whiff rate on that slider for lefties. So can use it against both, but obviously very good against right-handed hitters. And then has 3 different types of changeups. Obviously, coming from Japan, you have to have the splitter, but also throws regular changeup and a Vulcan change. And those 3 pitches are very important for how he gets out left-handed hitters. Mentioned that slider more so for righties. He throws the slider and the fastball to righties around 93% of the time. So it's primarily a 2-pitch pitcher to righties. And those 2 pitches are really, really good. But for lefties, he will throw the slider in there, but it's very important, especially coming over to the big leagues, to have that changeup to go against lefties as well. So important that he's able to develop at least one of those changeups. Throw the curveball as well, but primarily for Imai, it's that fastball slider combination. Now, I'm going to give you some talking points here. I got these from Yuri Karasawa, who runs the Yaku Cosmopolitan. That's YAKYU Cosmo on social media. You want to go check him out, but follows the Japanese Baseball League. He was recently on the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast that I listened to, which led me to really wanting to buy in to Tatsuya Imai. So I'm going to give you some of the talking points from that podcast that Kurosawa pointed out, and said that Imai is more in the Kodai Senga range in terms of upside, not quite to the level of Yamamoto. So somewhere kind of in between there. Should be considered one of the top 3 free agents this offseason, along with Dylan Cease and Framber Valdez. So puts him in that range of pitcher that would definitely be the top of this free agent market. They talked about the walk rate that has gone down each of the past 5 seasons, going all the way from nearly 14% walk rate, which is just awful, all the way down to a 7% walk rate this past year. So that's been a huge improvement for him. And Kurosawa said you can buy into that because he did make some mechanical adjustments to simplify the delivery, change that arm slot. And so you can buy into the walk rate going down because of those adjustments, and something that was tangibly done to fix that. He said it is still more control over command, but able to throw more strikes. And you have to consider the adjustment to Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball uses a different baseball than Japan does, and you hear it all the time with Japanese pitchers coming over that sometimes it can take months for them to get used to throwing the baseball that we use here in the States. So that's something that you have to consider, especially for a guy that's had command and control issues in the past, and also might benefit from a 6-man rotation, which we'll talk about more in the second segment, because I think that's something that the Atlanta Braves could potentially offer for Imai. And then maybe the best thing, and what I put in the thumbnail here to drive a lot of you in, is that Imai had a comment recently saying that he would rather beat the Dodgers than join them. This is a quote from Imai himself on a podcast called The Hodo Station, who said, "Of course, I'd enjoy playing alongside Ohtani, Yamamoto, and Sasaki, but winning against a team like that and becoming a world champion would be the most valuable thing in my life. If anything, I'd rather take them down." So you heard that here first. Tatsuya Imai, you didn't hear it here first, but he wants to take on Ohtani. He wants to take on the Dodgers. Now, we'll see how much he actually means that if the Dodgers come carrying a big bag of cash. I'm sure he's not going to want to turn that down. But it's definitely, I think, refreshing to hear, especially for one of these Japanese players coming over, that maybe just all of them won't join the Dodgers. And maybe you have somebody that actually views Ohtani and the rest of those guys on the Dodgers as, I don't want to say enemies, but at least has that competitive edge that, hey, I don't want to join these guys. I want to take them down. I want to beat them. So I think if you can convince him that the Braves are the team to do that, and, the Braves did it in 2021. That's been a while from now. And these last couple of years may not help with convincing him that the Braves are the team to take on and rival the Dodgers. But I do just personally and biasly think that the Braves can do that. But it's just nice to hear. And again, hopefully he won't sign the Dodgers. Hopefully they don't just wipe the floor with all these big Japanese free agents that are here this offseason. But I think that's a point in the Braves' favor, because I think many people will consider them, along with the Mets and the Phillies, as one of the teams that could compete with the Dodgers. And so maybe that's a point in their favor for hopefully landing the big-time free agent coming over from Japan. Next, we'll talk about what it will cost to get Imai. Obviously, it's not going to come cheap, but it is going to depend on how evaluators view him and what you think the ultimate outcome for him will be. We'll talk about all that here next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. You got NFL action coming up this Thanksgiving weekend. The Lions are a 2.5-point favorite over the Green Bay Packers. The Chiefs are a 3-point favorite over the Cowboys, and the Ravens are a 7-point favorite over the Bengals on Thanksgiving. So you can check all those odds there at FanDuel.com. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way that you play. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day, solely getting caught up on everything happening around Major League Baseball, like teams that might actually sign Tatsuya Imai. You can hear all that over on Locked On MLB. But make sure you subscribe right here to Locked On Braves as well. Got a special episode coming your way on Wednesday as you travel for the Thanksgiving holidays. Me and Lindsay will be on the podcast tomorrow, breaking down everything that's happened so far in the Braves offseason and what's to come. So make sure you got your notification bell turned on and all that so you know when that episode gets posted. And then on Friday, we'll have our mailbag episode. So look for a post for me on Locked On _Braves on X, asking for your questions. Submit your question to that post to be answered on Friday's live mailbag episode. So hope you all have a great Thanksgiving and a good Black Friday coming up this week. But again, we'll keep you covered here at Locked On Braves. Getting back into our discussion here of Tatsuya Imai and why I think the Braves should sign him, and it makes a lot of sense. Well, let's talk about how much it's going to cost. It's not going to be cheap, and this is going to be Alex Anthopoulos and the Braves taking a chance here, and a big chance. MLB Trade Rumors projects him to get 6 years, $150 million, so that's $25 million a year. And right there, it's over that $22 million a year mark. So you know that's going to be a hard sell for Alex Anthopoulos. And I've even seen other projections out there at 8 years, $200 million. So it could get even more. It really just depends on how evaluators see him. In that MLB Trade Rumors projections article, there's one evaluator saying that there's too much reliever risk. They see him becoming a reliever. And as I said earlier, listening to Kurosawa of Yuku Cosmopolitan talk about how he could be a top of the rotation arm, that he has that much upside. So I think there's a varying range of possibilities for Tatsuya Imai, and it's just going to depend on how you view him as to how much and what team is going to go on that limb that views him highly, that's going to go on that limb and give him that money. Now, you look at the framework for some recent, top Japanese starting pitchers that came over. Yamamoto got 12 years, $325 million from the Dodgers, which is just an insane amount, but it just won them a World Series, so it's already paying dividends. And then Kodai Senga signed a 5-year, $75 million deal. So you see two opposite ends of the spectrum here. With Imai, you are signing a guy, like I said, that is 27, going to turn 28 in May. So you're getting a guy that's very young, who's capable of getting a 6-7 year deal. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. So again, it's with all these things, it's going to depend on what the price point is. Plus, you are going to have to pay a significant posting fee of about $25 million in order to get him. So you got to consider that as well. And look, if we're just going to sit back and say the Braves aren't spending any money, we just won't talk about any of these top free agents. But as I keep saying, at some point, you got to take some risk. And yes, this is a risky move, but I think there is a lot of upside to it. And I think there's a lot of benefits for both the Braves and for Tatsuya Imai if he were to sign here. And one is that I think the Braves are set up maybe as well as anyone to go with a 6-man rotation, at least to start the year. Obviously, things happen and you have to shift and adjust, but let's pretend that they are able to sign Tatsuya Imai, and you could go with a 6-man rotation of Chris Sale, Spencer Schwellenbach, Imai, Strider, Elder, and Waldrop to begin the season. That could be your 6-man rotation with J.R. Ritchie, Lucas Braun knocking on the doors, prospects, Joey Wentz in there. You could, even throw Jose Suarez in there if you had to. There are options for the Atlanta Braves in this rotation in order to appease him a little bit and give him a 6-man rotation. Now, to kind of tease the episode between me and Lindsay a little bit more, we talk about the idea of going to a 6-man rotation and how that is difficult. And I agree. I don't think you can stick with a 6-man rotation the entire season, but I do think the Braves are set up, as well as anyone other than the Dodgers, to have the ability to, at times throughout the year, go to a 6-man rotation. Even at times when you don't, you can play around with off days to still make sure that Imai only pitches once a week. And so I think the Braves could sell him on that they are a team with enough depth in the rotation to allow him to still pitch once a week and stay on that, 6-man type of rotation that he's used to in Japan for the most part. Now you get down to it, you need your best starters. Elder's first half Elder last year and not second half Elder. Maybe Waldrop takes a step back. Like, you might have to adjust some things, but I think the Braves could at least offer that to him and at least have the ability to do that for him. So that is one thing that I think would benefit both teams. Now, there's also the argument against this that the Braves will need to already be very careful with Chris Sale, with Spencer Schwellenbach, with Spencer Strider, and can they really afford to have another starter that they kind of have to baby a little bit? And maybe that's not the right word for it, but that you have to manage their workload a little bit. And do you want another starter like that, or would it be more beneficial for the Braves to go out and get, kind of what I have been pushing for, is a veteran innings eater that can give you 170 innings and it's going to go every 5th day and give you a quality 5-6 innings pitched? Would that be more beneficial for the Braves than taking an upside shot on a guy like Imai, who could be top of the rotation arm, but you might have to manage his workload and his innings a little bit when you're already doing that for some other guys? So I understand both sides of the argument on that. But with Imai, you'd be getting a guy who, like I said, depends on what evaluators you want to look at. But just from the words of the guy that I know follows that league very closely and watches all of their games, thinks he has, top of the rotation type of potential, at least number 3 starter potential, and is going into his age 27 season, has been very durable in the NPB. I think that's just a tremendous opportunity for the Atlanta Braves. You don't have to risk losing that qualifying offer like you would if you were going to go after, even a Ranger Suarez, Dylan Cease, Framber, all those guys. You wouldn't have to worry about losing that qualifying offer. And it's somebody who is motivated to take down Ohtani and the Dodgers and not join them. Like I said, we'll see what happens if the Dodgers show up with a big pile of money, but at least somebody that is not afraid to say that and put that on record, I think is very cool, just quite honestly, and would love to have that type of attitude on this team. You'd be deepening the top of your rotation, and that, you get Imai, and all of a sudden you got Sale, Schwellenbach, Strider, and Imai, 4 guys that you feel pretty confident in at the top of your rotation, and hopefully you get at least 2 or 3 of them to the postseason, assuming you get to the postseason healthy enough to be part of your rotation. So it just deepens the top of your rotation a little bit, assuming that Imai comes over and is a top of the rotation type of arm. Now, there's obviously risk. There's always risk when you're signing a free agent starting pitcher. He struggles with the transition over. The control issues come back, especially when having to deal with a new type of baseball, a baseball that's a little bit different, and you're potentially stuck with the guy that's a fastball slider reliever who's making $25 million a year. Now, I do think there's a chance with that fastball, being upper 90s, a slider being as devastating as it is, that there is a fallback option of Imai being perhaps even a shutdown closer, but still, that's a lot of money, assuming the projections are correct, and he's getting around 25 to 28 million a year. That's a lot to pay a guy to be a closer, but I think he does at least have that floor, right? So it's kind of what you look for in top prospects. I talked about it with Hurston Waldrop, a guy that has a ceiling as a top of the rotation starter, but a floor even as a top setup man, potentially reliever. That's kind of what you look for in your prospects, and I think that same is true here for Imai. I think he has the upside to be a top rotation guy. If those control issues get even better and the improvements that he's made in Japan carry over to Major League Baseball with the fastball slider combination that he has and those other pitches develop, I think he has top of the rotation potential. But even if he doesn't, I still think he has set up closer type potential. It's just at that point, you've already committed to paying this guy top of the rotation type of money. So definitely risk, as there are with all of these moves. But at some point, you got to take a calculated risk if you're Alex Anthopoulos and the Braves. And I'm not sitting here trying to say that Tatsuya Imai is that guy, but I definitely think he should be in consideration. If he's not going to go to the Dodgers, why not the Braves? Of course, but not the Braves, then it's probably the Padres. That would be really fun after the comments that he made. It's probably the Yankees. It's probably the Mets. It's probably, some of these teams that the Japanese players normally go towards. But wouldn't it be cool for the Braves to actually go out and take a shot like this on a guy like Tatsuya Imai? A guy we know they won't be taking a shot on anymore is Sonny Gray, as he got traded on this Tuesday. We'll talk about that more here next. So one pitcher that we know is off the market right now for the Atlanta Braves is Sonny Gray. It was reported on Tuesday that the Red Sox shipped him off that the Cardinals shipped him off to the Red Sox for a pair of prospects. The Cardinals sent $20 million in the deal. I thought it was a fair deal. I talked about it a lot. I know many of you have speculated on the Braves perhaps making this type of move. And I said the Cardinals would have to eat at least $15 million for me to even consider it and not take much of a prospect haul back. They end up eating $20 million. They do get the Red Sox top 5 or number 5 overall prospect and a guy in Richard Fitz that's, back of the rotation, swingman type of stuff. I said the equivalent for the Braves would have been like a Bryce Elder, Garrett Bauman, a young starter with some upside, and then a guy that you could, use in the back of your rotation right now. I think Lindsey kind of made the equivalent of Bryce Elder and Owen Murphy. I think that's, pretty comparable right there. But that's likely what the price would have been for the Braves. And again, I wouldn't have hated doing that. I was never as big on Sonny Gray as others were, so I'm not that upset that they didn't make that trade happen. But that is another name that is off the board for the Atlanta Braves as you're looking for a potential fit for them in the starting pitcher market, because I do think it is important. And I asked Lindsey this too on the podcast that will come out on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I still think it's imperative for the Braves to find a starting pitcher. Now, as I said, it doesn't have to be Tatsuya Imai. I would love for that to happen, for them to get a potential top of the rotation arm, but they do have to find some sort of veteran to lengthen out the depth. And if you have to go to a 6-man rotation at least to start, there's going to be attrition at some point. So go ahead and get that depth now while you can, instead of having to search for it during the season, instead of having to call up a prospect before they're ready. Now, as I said on the episode yesterday with J.R. Ritchie, I think the guy's ready and he's proven, but we don't know what that transition is going to look like. We don't know if it's going to be a Kyle Wright who really struggled to make that transition for a while, or we don't know if it's going to be a Spencer Schwellenbach who came up and immediately was one of the better pitchers in baseball. You just never know with some of these prospects where they are mentally and how they're going to handle that transition. So while J.R. Ritchie, maybe even a Lucas Braun, look ready, like they're knocking on the door, Blake Burkhalter, if he's able to stay around in the system, you just never truly know. Didier Fuentes, that's a great example of a guy that big time stuff, maybe some of the best stuff in the system, but just clearly wasn't ready to make that transition. So you just never know. But right now you have the chance to go out and get somebody that you are at least a little bit more confident in. And that's why I think it is still imperative that the Braves find that starting pitcher of some level this offseason to go ahead and deepen that depth while you have the chance, instead of getting into the season, somebody or two gets hurt and you're having to call up some prospects you're not sure of. You're having to, throw Joey Wentz and Carlos Carrasco's of the world in there where you really don't feel too confident in those guys. So I hope the Braves are continuing to look for starting pitcher. We know at least AA has said that they are. But we'll see. Maybe it is Tatsuya Imai. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments section below. What do you think the chances are the Braves ever sign anybody from Japan again? Let me know down below. And then the Rays signed Jake Fraley. So Jake Fraley continuing to get passed around. I think it's the second time he's been with the Rays this offseason. So I didn't know the Braves might take another shot on him. But he's getting a guaranteed $3 million. Mark Topkin reports, and can earn an additional $400K. So pretty good deal there for Jake Fraley. He was projected to get around $3.6 million in free agency. So gets 3 with a possibility of 3.4. Does Jake Fraley this offseason to go to the Rays. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Again, have a podcast coming out on Wednesday as well. Me and Lindsay talking about Cody Bellinger, the need for a big bat. Do they need to go after Ha-Seong Kim since they have Mauricio Dubon? Is it worth the price to pay for Ha-Seong Kim since you already have Dubon? Do you need a big pitcher this offseason or just any type of pitcher this offseason? Me and Lindsay discuss all that on Wednesday's episode, which you can listen to while you're traveling to your Thanksgiving destination. Hope you all have safe travels. Hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. I'll be back on Friday for our mailbag episode, so get your questions ready for that. And then we'll be gearing up for the winter meetings. We usually see a lot of moves happen in that first couple of weeks of December. So I think we're going to see a lot more action happening here very, very soon. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, leave us a comment down below. Love hearing from you. Love reading all of those comments. Even if I don't get a chance to respond to them, I do love going through them and reading them when I get the chance. So thank you so much for your support there. Again, make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.